All right, welcome back to another episode of the Vets in Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Will Curtis, and I am joined by Zahir today, who's going to tell us about his story about transitioning through the service into a career in real estate and what's the things he's learned and would love to maybe do a little bit different if he had the chance. So Zahir, thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Will. Thank you.
Yeah, so tell us what'd you do in the service?
So I was actually IT. I was in the Navy for about 4 years. Just got out almost 4 years ago at this point. And after that, I pretty much hopped into real estate full time.
So was that always the goal? Like as soon as you got in, you realized you're probably not going to make the Navy a career. Let's go into real estate, or did you just kind of fall into it?
I planned it for a while, because I like to say that since I was a kid, I was interested in real estate. So I had a long plan of how exactly to jump into it. And once I came towards the end of my contract, I started preparing for my test and things like that.
So you actually started prepping before. What did that transition look like? If you're looking at a year or so out, what were you already doing trying to build that career?
So really just a lot of studying and understanding what to look into with real estate, knowing that I wanted to be a residential agent, particularly. Just really understanding what that market looks like and how it changes over time. So that's really what a big chunk of my transition was grabbing a hold of that understanding and then really just um, making it to where when I got to those clientels, I knew what I was talking about. Because a lot of agents, when they step into that new field, it's a completely different ball game than what you've actually been studying, to become an agent. The test doesn't teach you how to be an agent. So just kind of, reaching out to brokers and really getting a hold of it before I even got my license.
So as you were in that transition, is there anything that you think you did that absolutely prepared you that if you had to go back and do it again, you would absolutely do the same thing again?
Yes, and that would be shop brokerages. We would and really understand what type of agent you want to be, um, because there's so many lanes of it, right? There's off market, which would be, the homes that you don't see on HGTV and where a good bulk of inventory does move. And then, there's also commercial, like we mentioned earlier, and there's even subcategories of commercial, working with finding those really big land developments for, a shopping center or finding a smaller office for a business owner. So it just really, there's a lot of lanes and areas you could focus on. And I could feel myself, so I'm sure there's other people as well that get overwhelmed when they first get into the industry because there's just so much that you can do. So you'll be fast tracked if you can really figure out, honestly, before you even get your license, what type of agent you really want to be.
So that's interesting. You share that. In my journey, I thought you could either sell houses or flip houses. Like that's all I thought that really. That's all I thought we had, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how did you go through and know what kind of agent you wanted to be?
Oh man, I blame HGTV. Me and my mom used to watch that at a young age, and I've always had an appreciation for art. So part of it was one knowing kind of who I was, right? Um, Being aware of that and how much I actually love art, because to me, when I see a beautiful home, it makes me think of a picture. It makes me think of a portrait. When you're looking at it from the curb, to me, I see that framing. So I see pictures and I see, beautiful moments, right? And of course, it was luxury real estate. So that was always my aim, to really try to break into that side of the industry.
Okay. So going back now, looking at what you had, was there anything that in that transition you'd maybe have done differently or wish you would have done maybe a little differently?
Mm. I think I would have wanted to shop brokerages a little bit more, really interview a lot more brokers at the time in the industry. I don't have any regrets about the brokerages I did join. They were great. I've learned a lot from them. But in terms of what things I wish I would have done more, I would start there. Yeah.
What we've had guests on here who joined a brokerage simply because, hey, the guy that sold me my house was there, so I figured I'd go there,
Mhm.
or hey, my neighbor was with this brokerage, so I figured to join. But you're actually saying you should shop brokerages. What is it that these brokerages offer that's different, that if I was going to start shopping brokerages, what is it I should be looking for?
I would say you should be looking for the brokerage that's going to one mentor you, because a lot of brokerages don't do that, right? They just have you join and say good luck, right? But I would really kind of going back into what I said earlier with understanding what type of agent you want to be. Find the brokerage that really aligns with that image you have for yourself, because not every agent or not every brokerage, I'm sorry, is going to align with that quite as well. They might have great training. They might, you know, um, be feeding you leads and things like that. But if it's not the type of leads that are really, giving you fulfillment in your journey of real estate, it might be, a little bit contradictory for you.
I
So,
see that. And
yeah.
I think interestingly, you kind of alluded to, but didn't quite get in there. Each brokerage has got a little bit of a different culture.
Mhm.
I think that's the one thing where I know I've been in some brokerages where, like, man, I felt like I was part of the family. It was really
Yeah.
close. Everybody is all about win-win. And others were like, "Oh, did you call that lead? Let me
Yeah.
do that one real quick," and they'll yank it from you.
Yeah.
And seeing drastically different brokerages, I think is interesting. Where most veterans coming out, we're used to that team mindset. Whether
Yeah.
whatever branch of service you're in, like we're all competitive, but I
Yeah.
also don't want to. I want to beat you while you're at your best.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes the civilian world, and especially in brokerages, the culture is just not that.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of the times it is, what I like to call secretly competitive,
Hmm.
to where, they're secretly in competition with you, and I don't think it's necessary because there's a lot of money in this world, right? So you don't, like you said, win-win. There's enough for everybody to win, but I think because a lot of people don't really, even in the civilian world, don't really understand again what type of agent they want to be, they find clashing with other agents in the brokerage.
So now you decided to go more luxury. It sounds. Why, or maybe not why, but what is it that you found that has helped you go on the luxury side? And I think for many veterans, that first job was, or the first real job they got was military. And we both know as young enlisted, that pay is definitely not close to luxury. What was it that allowed you to start training and to go in that direction? And I guess what skill sets have you found that help you kind of connect with these luxury clients?
Yeah, so interior designing. I also kind of like I said earlier about seeing picture or homes as pictures or portraits. I love interior design. I love the actual concept of getting something on paper or really, digitally now because you have renderings. But from that process to how do we bring this to life? And when you start dealing with luxury clientele, they're very picky. If the countertop is a few inches off, they'll notice that. You know what I mean? Which does work for me because military, we're accustomed to being very particular about certain things, and but really interior design, and then after that just meeting people, being in areas to where you'll end up finding those type of clientele, networking, if you would.
Yeah. And I think that to me that would be, if I was sitting back saying I'm going to go into luxury, to me that feels like that would be the weird thing, is maybe a bit of I just don't fit in, right? That I don't have
Yeah.
anything. I grew up relatively, not well off, you know,
Mhm.
going to the country club or
Yeah.
what have you would feel absolutely awkward to me. Have you struggled with that same kind of thought process, maybe being an outsider inside of some of these circles?
Yeah, for a little bit I did. Because again, it kind of I'm gonna probably go back to this a lot, but it goes back to being comfortable with who you are,
Mm,
especially as an agent. And I think that's a big part of transition that a lot of vets struggle with is kind of, holding on to the best parts of the military, but still allowing you enough room to grow into a new person outside of the military. So I think once you can kind of figure that out, networking in general becomes a lot easier because even when I wasn't going to the more luxurious events, I was still struggling, even with average Joes such as myself, because that connection can feel so far and few in between. But once you kind of get to a certain standpoint, it becomes a lot easier.
yeah, I can see that. Now, have you found any skills from your time in the military? And you were doing IT, so I could see maybe a few, but have you found some of those skills from the military that has just absolutely, made you all the difference in your civilian career now as a real estate agent?
Yes, especially with being IT, the understanding of how technology can really integrate into our business and different, marketing ideas that use technology to really expand your reach has helped me. That background made it a lot easier for me to understand. So that helped a lot. And then, really, the biggest one. The biggest one is communication. I know you know how particular the military is about communication. So when I get a lot of clients, they're not, believe it or not, they're not used to their agent communicating as much as they should and being upfront with them on a lot of things. Whereas I don't really struggle with that. That's not an issue you're going to run into with me. Of course, I have my hours, right? I don't pick up the phone at 10 p.m. because you want to know about the bathroom in the house, but I'll give you a call back in the morning first thing. But that's really, I would contribute my military time to being an effective communicator.
So that's interesting that you frame this a little bit differently as other guests we've had, because other guests have said communication in the past, but they've also said it's something they've struggled with, maybe being too blunt,
Yeah.
profanity,
Mhm.
very I don't know, we just talk different in the military, acronym heavy and rich. But yet
Yeah.
you're kind of twisting this a little bit as saying that's actually part of your superpower is your willingness and able to actually communicate. I mean that
Yes.
what do you think of why do you think so many veterans struggle with communication, but yet you feel that's something you've excelled with?
So for me, it's more along the lines of the willingness to even communicate,
Mm.
starting there, because again, a lot of agents just don't, you might have, they might not get back to you until a few hours later, or, which if we're in a meeting, it's understandable, but get back to you late or just not communicate as well as they should at all. And when I say that, I mean just not putting in the effort to really try to communicate when it comes to the bluntness and the profanity. I do struggle with that sometimes, mostly the profanity part. But it's really, for me, I just consider my professionalism, and again, going back to understanding who I want to be as an agent now. Yes, I know I have that background of a sailor, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean I have to, in my work life, cuss and use profanity and language as a sailor. So I just really contemplate on what I want to achieve as a agent, despite my background.
Yeah. I- You keep going back to this, so I want to dive a little more into it. Is
Yeah.
what kind of agent you want to be? You keep diving back into there. You seem to have, especially for just a handful of years of the industry, you seem to have a really good handle on who you want to be, what you want to be. Where I
Mhm.
think a lot of service members, what we've talked to and have come into the profession, struggle with, I don't know what I want to be. I can even say for me personally, I was almost 10 years in the industry before I really sat down and said, who do I want to be? What makes me happy? What makes me me? But you seem
Yeah.
to have a good handle on that. I guess, how have you been able to have a handle on that, which I think is something that so many others really struggle with?
Yeah. Research, talking to a lot of different agents in the industry, really understanding what they do and really just asking the right questions, right? Um, so for me, it was really a lot of just gathering as much information as I could and aligning it best with what worked for me. So that's why I said it kind of, if you can figure this out early, you'll be fast tracked, because that's where a lot of people really just have a hard time reeling it in at first. For the first few years is even one, grasping how big our industry really is, and then finding your place in it. So if you can find your place ahead of time, via research, and you have to talk to people. Real estate is a relationship business, so if you can do that ahead of time, you'll the that kind of goes back into networking as well, how it'll help you in the future. So talk to the fellow agents in your industry, and really just, if they're willing to talk, great. If they're not, find somebody else to talk to who's going to answer your questions, and really know what you want to ask, right? So for me, for instance, is, hey, I want to, this is what I'm looking for in the industry. I really love how homes are brought to life, right? So, what would you suggest in terms of, what path I follow in terms of real estate? And then they'll give your opinion. You take it with a grain of salt, and you take what you like, and you leave what you don't, and you keep moving forward with it.
Now, were you doing this while you're getting ready to transition, or was this strictly when you started as a real estate agent after you'd gotten out?
This was in transition. So even during when I was taking my classes, I was talking to like the agent that was teaching the classes. I was going to real estate mixers, a little bit towards the end of me getting out. And then after I got out, I did work an IT full-time job as well. So there was a juggle there. But again, I knew I wanted to be in real estate, so I was still putting time in my schedule for it.
Yeah. So, I mean, was it just the mixers, or were you just kind of cold calling? Hey, I saw your real estate agent. I'm thinking about doing this. I mean, what did that, I guess, were you seeing people that would be willing to, and quite a few people would be willing to, or was it people kind of push you off and never give you a call back?
Um, I would say it was a good amount of both, a good 50-50. The mixers, there's a lot of people like me or like you there at the time. They're new to the industry. They're trying to figure out which way to go. There's a lot of people recruiting for their brokerages, right? So I would say it works in terms of just getting out there and getting comfortable and talking to people and really understanding what the industry looks like for the first few years. And then after that, I did cold call people. I used social media as well, looked at people who, of course, social media is a different thing. But I called the ones who looked like they were closing deals and things like that. At the time, I couldn't see if they actually were, but I looked at their social medias and did a lot of reaching out through that as well, and cold calling as well, talking to a lot of different brokerages, property management companies, and yeah, and I even actually got an interview by calling them one time. They said, "Oh, you're different. Let's let's talk more." And we're still, me and the owner are still friends to this day,
Yeah.
so you really, I always recommend, please call people and reach out, because that's a lot of people don't like cold calling, so they admire people who do.
I will say, kind of a testament of that. I'm getting ready to hire a new agent on to my team, and legitimately, he's like, "Hey, I'm thinking about commercial real estate. I'm out early for sure. I want to know what I need to know." can we sit down and have lunch and kind of walk through that? After that conversation, I was like, I think this dude's going to fit.
Yeah.
Set him up with the other agent on our team. He thought
Mm.
the same thing, and I was like, all right, hurry up and get your license. We wouldn't bring you on. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't have known this guy from Adam if it wasn't for the fact that he reached out and
Exactly.
made the effort. Um, Now, did you specifically look for veterans that were in real estate, or were you just looking for anybody that was in real estate and kind of seeing where that went?
I was really just looking for anybody. Of course, I did come across some veterans, and
Mm-hmm.
the connection, you know how it is. It's almost immediate,
Yeah.
So that made me, in those moments, feel a lot more comfortable. One of the teams that I was a part of was a veterans based, team. Like they were very heavily focused on helping veterans and active duty members. So, I learned a lot through that time. But that was actually by coincidence more than anything, to be honest.
I can see that, and I've even myself thought about what if I just built this veteran specific real estate team? What was it like being on one of those? I think I can imagine there are a lot of pros. Everybody gets along very quickly, but I can imagine
Yes.
that quickly becomes all of your business is military, which is not bad depending on your market.
Yeah. So I will say the culture was very, like you said, very warm.
Mm.
Everybody felt close, and everybody kind of, it fit, it worked because we were all familiar with each other. And then, my broker at the time was a chief, so he was very. You can see where the military was still a part of him and how he ran his business, which again, it helped me in the long run because that schedule of getting up at 6 a.m. and looking at, the market and what it's doing, what's selling and what's not, right? Versus, how we used to wake up and go run a few miles in the morning. It's just a little bit different, but those habits that help build success is what really I appreciated from that. And I don't really think that a lot of brokers, from my experience so far, are really kind of breaking those habits down and starting small and consistently in order to really build yourself. Because one thing I do find is a lot of agents aren't actively in the market. So what they end up struggling with is really knowing what's going on. So when they talk to these clients, they're kind of lost in the sauce. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was a great environment. It really helped structure myself, I like to say.
That's interesting, and as we've done, I think this is 50-ish, 60-ish interviews now at this point.
Mm.
We're starting to really notice patterns. And one of the things that's interesting is that you're not getting up in the morning and doing PT, but you're getting up in the morning and exercising your mind. You're exercising your knowledge of the market, doing those things. And I think that's interesting because we keep hearing this over and over and over again is jump in, get in the market first thing before you're customer facing, start paying attention to the market where even myself, 7:30, I'm usually in the office ready to go. Got to get the kids out the door, and then I'm as soon as the kids are at school, I'm on my
Yeah,
way to the office, and that's a good portion of my morning before agents come in, before I'm starting to do deals. I've got a good
yeah,
hour and a half of studying the market, and
absolutely.
that's I don't know that seems to be predominantly we see top performers do that over and over and over again, but we also see a lot
Yeah,
of veterans who come in with that same mindset.
yeah,
It just, I don't know, as you're saying, it just kind of dawned on me that there's got to be something to this that just getting in, having a routine, starting, I say early,
yeah.
starting early in the morning just tends to be something that we keep seeing over and over as a sign of success, right? We don't know if it truly is, but there's always signs that are habits that lead to success. So I'm curious. We may need to
Mm.
dive into that a little bit more because it seems to be
Yeah.
something we see continually.
Yeah, so the I'll say that because I kind of actually talked about it with my current broker when I first joined, and I suggested that on Monday mornings, we look at the market. We just understand what the market is doing right now because I believe it's just a theory that it instills confidence. Um, when you actually know what is going on in the market and you're cold calling, you're reaching out on your social media, you're making content videos, you actually know what you're talking about. Because I feel like I see a lot of agents that get up there and they're not confident in what they're saying. And I think that confidence shows when you're talking to clients, when you're talking to other agents. That confidence really starts with those small habits of every morning looking at the MLS and seeing how many homes have sold, or how many homes are renting in comparison to actually selling. Is renting a bigger market right now? You know what I mean? And why is it a bigger market? Is it because the mortgage rates and interest rates are too high? And in most cases they are for most people, right? So really just understanding those factors in the market is really going to help you when talking in your everyday, day to day, like you said, with talking to client, becoming when now you're client facing, and you're confident in yourself, and when they start asking you questions and your opinions on the market, you can actually have tangible ideas that you can really talk about. So you're not just hitting them with let me get back to you, which is fine. It's good to say that too if you really don't know. But of course we always want to have, something to tell them, because that's why they're asking you.
So where are you going? You mentioned MLS, but I imagine
Mm.
there's other sources. Where are you going each morning when you're starting to dive into the market and seeing what's going on? Is it just MLS, or are you finding other sources? Of course, without
um
giving much of your secret sauce away, right?
Yeah, no, you're fine. I don't mind. So I actually look at a lot of FSBOs as well.
Hmm.
So Zillow, I'll also look on, believe it or not, Facebook Marketplace, and see where these sellers are actually trying to sell their homes themselves. And then one thing that's a little bit older is driving around. I personally, because the market I'm in now, I'm not originally from. So what faster way to really understand where I'm at? Of course, I can look at my computer screen all day long, but when it comes to really understanding like how different pockets of the city are actually selling, you got to kind of get out there and just drive around and really familiarize yourself with what is there and what isn't. Like a vacant lot, and understanding that, okay, they're building a few townhomes down the street, so this vacant lot might be a prime opportunity for another builder to come in and build. So that's really the main things I really do in the morning in terms of familiarizing myself with the market.
Yeah. I mean, I can see where there's value to that, especially the hands-on. I think too often we think we can do real estate from a computer, or we can do real estate from our desk. Um, but I mean, you got to be out there and actually see what's going on. See, I would imagine the residential side, especially
Yeah,
luxury.
yeah,
What are the features that people want? What homes need to be updated? What are the ones that sell really quick? What do they have in
yeah,
common when it comes
exactly.
to features? And I know we're personally looking at buying a home
Mhm.
right now, and as we're touring these homes, especially now, trying to get up more into that luxury level, we've been unbelievably disappointed in
Yeah,
the quality that would be considered luxury. We're like, this is
yeah,
builder grade stuff, just a
yeah,
bigger house. That's not what we
exactly.
were looking for, right? And
Mhm.
I can imagine if you were in this every day, where we're just kind of now getting ready to start looking and shopping. I can
Yeah.
imagine if you're in this every day, very quickly, hey, nobody wants granite anymore, but they want quartz or whatever the case has. We had no
Exactly.
idea.
Yeah.
But start seeing these trends very quickly and able to advise your clients very differently, and especially with a luxury level client who's got a very different expectation, I would imagine.
Yes, they do. They do. Like I said, they can become a bit anal, and rightfully so. I mean, you're spending, a house is even a average house of 300, 400K. That's still a big expense, a big purchase, and you have every right to be anal in that regard, right? But when you're getting to even more, yeah, multiplying that a couple of times over to where you're spending $1 million or more, yeah, they're gonna be
Yeah.
they're gonna want their homes of quality, and how they imagine it. And the thing about imagination, it can change. So you have to be, understand how those trends, like you said, really interact with the buyer, and what the buyer is going to want, or your client, and how that fits with your current client.
I could see that that's a different side of the market than what we deal with, and I think that's interesting. The things that you have to pay attention to, which again is why I preach to most of our agents that coming from the commercial side, they're like, oh, we're selling houses, but I think I want to do a little bit of commercial. I want to dabble, and I was like,
Mm,
how would you feel if I dabbled in residential? I don't know. Well, you'd be a terrible agent to work with.
yeah,
Ah, you don't see where this is going, but
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that specialization, especially what you're talking about, understanding what trends, what people are looking for, especially if they're going to be that picky on that home or what they're going to be looking for, you almost have to be a product expert or at least a
yeah,
geographic expert, but at least know
yes.
that product inside and out.
Yes, you do, because they're going to ask you the hard questions, and that's essentially what you've signed up for, when becoming their agent. They're going to ask you these questions. So the more you know up front, the better. But of course, you're not going to know everything. Nobody knows everything unless you've been in the industry for 100 years and you're constantly learning, which, because it's always changing trend. That's what trends do, is they change every few years. Like right now, we're seeing a lot of 70s and 80s themed things come back, especially out here in my market, right? So really understanding that, is a big part of it, because I mean, like you said, it's everly evolving. So um, being an expert and a specialist in whatever field of real estate you decide to go to is going to, again, fast track your success, because a lot of people want to dabble here and there. And while there's nothing wrong with that, because you got to kind of try it to know if you like it, in my opinion, right? Especially when it comes to a career. um, but I would say, don't dabble for too long, right? Yeah.
So as we start kind of wrapping everything up, one of the questions we ask everybody is if you were to sit down and look at yourself, 4, 6 years ago, but as you're still in
Mm.
service, looking to make that transition, is there anything that you would have done either differently, or is there a lesson in there that you wish you didn't learn as hard or as difficult as you did? Maybe you learned that lesson
Ooh,
faster.
let's see. Prospecting. Prospecting every day is going to be a big part of your life when you're first starting out as an agent. And I'm still first starting out, and I prospect for at least 2 to 3 hours, every day, because when you're, especially in my circumstance, and I'm not from my market. So, and being in, Houston, there's a lot of communities and things like that. However, not only being a veteran and having certain different, habits and just ways of thinking from a civilian, my sphere of influence was not large. So for me, prospecting was huge, right? So I really wish that I kind of would have also integrated that into my mindset and learning a little bit more when I first started, when I first was transitioning in, because it would have been even easier to grasp then. Because yeah, when you're first starting, it should be at least 70% of your business from day to day, because I mean, you're not going to be generating money if you don't. So, and last I checked, bills were getting expensive, more and more expensive. So yeah, that would be a key part for me, is making, looking back, if I could go back, really even starting prospecting, honestly, before I even got my license. Really just kind of cold calling or reaching out social media wise. Not like to say I'm impersonating an agent or anything like that, but really just to kind of get a feel of it and really get my toes wet before I got my license.
Was there anything in that prospecting that as you started doing it, you kind of learned that didn't work or could have worked better as you started that prospecting? Because I think there's 1,000 ways to find business.
Yes.
And I mean, if you go on any of these forums, it's how did you get your last 5 clients? What was the way that you got your
Yeah.
biggest lead? We see that all the time, but what have you
Yeah.
found that maybe has worked well or just hadn't worked well?
Mm. Excuse me. Man, one thing I find that does work well, but it does take time is again going back to it is social media. Because in this day and age is a lot of things are digital, a lot of people are online, so when they look at you, a lot of the first things that they look at, unless you have perhaps an older clientele basis, is your social media. What are you doing? And I find that people are inherently nosy and they want to know as much about you as they can. So they're looking at your Facebook, at your Instagram, to seeing if they even resonate with you to work with you, because I'm sure it takes, what is it, the statistic they say is it takes seven points of contact before they're comfortable in buying with you.
Right.
So I tried to think of a way, how can I compound that, and staying top of mind. And social media is something that you can use specifically for that. So that would be one. And then I guess one that I wish I would have kept away from. um, hmm, that's a good one. Um, I don't think I really have one that I would like not have done, because honestly, everything works if you put enough time and effort into it. I think one that I see a lot of people kind of hate is open houses. A lot of people don't like open houses, and I've noticed that in my industry. Me personally, I love it because I get the opportunity to talk to people, whether or not they are going to become a client or not. It gives me that face to face interaction that we don't really get outside of, unless we're going to an event or just randomly, talking to people in our immediate area, wherever we may be. But it really almost, because it really gives you the opportunity to talk about real estate with somebody who is actively looking, whether it be they're looking to buy now or they're looking to buy 6 months from now, which, is pretty common at open houses. But I would say that would be another one in terms of prospecting.
Yeah, and complete outsider in. I think one of the things that we've heard over and over with open houses is that they're either successful or not based off of how well you market it beforehand. Where we
Yes.
had an open house in our neighborhood over the weekend, I had no idea that it was there. We never got a flyer. We never saw anything. We didn't even know the property's going on market. It's just all of a sudden open house. Come in within this 2 hour window.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't know until Saturday morning as we're driving away, to
Yeah.
run around and do our stuff for the day. So had we known, maybe would
Yeah.
have popped in and seen. So I don't know, complete outsider looking in. I think
Yeah.
that's
No, you're right.
that I think I could see where that could be either successful or not based off of how well you market that open house early on.
It is. It is. A lot of people, and even I do it sometimes, we'll just make some posts, or they'll, throw it up on because you can see it on our MLS, right? And just hope and pray that somebody sees it from there. But, you really have to actually do more than that, because if not, you might not talk to anybody, you might not get anybody. You might just be sitting there doing admin work at your open house, right? Rather than talking to clients, or potential clients, rather. So, yeah, no, open houses are a big one.
Well, I appreciate your time so much and you're willing to share everything. And hopefully, those of you that's watched, if you've got value out of this one, give us a like, share, comment, send it to somebody that you think
Well,
would get value on this one as well, right? Right to the social media.
Yeah.
You know, Zahir, thank you so much for spending your time with us. I'm sure, kind of listening to you, if we have questions, you'd be more than happy to jump into the comments and answer those questions if anybody had anything.
Absolutely.
So,
100%. Thank you so much.
yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Have a good one. Bye.